Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm It's Robbie Rhino, and in today's video I have a full review for you of the Jaguar Black Edition. So this is one of two brand new Black Edition offerings for World of Tanks console inside 2023, and this is the Cold War version, the other being the World War II Object 703 version 2 with the double barreled guns, so we'll have to have a look at that on a different day. But today's video is a review of the Cold War tank, which is this one here on the right as you look towards the top of your screen. And in today's video I'll be telling you everything you need to know about this vehicle, including the price, all of the stats, and having a look at the Armour viewer, and also my commander and equipment setup with some gameplay at the end. 4 gameplays to demonstrate how this tank performs on the battlefield. So the Jaguar Black Edition is a Type 59, in essence updated in 1988, a project between the US and the People's Republic of China. And yeah, Type 59 base, added on some composite armor to the hull and turret, and it's a prototype built with a 105mm gun. So in Cold War it is an Era 2 Eastern Alliance medium tank. It's a premium tank, and as it is a Black Edition tank it has a nice big XP bonus as well as a silver and commander XP bonus as well. So we'll have a look at the stats of this vehicle over on Excel in just a second, where we're going to be comparing to the Pharaoh's Fury, Ramses II, Amalad and the Bandit, all recently released tanks with similar hit points, similar guns and alpha damages, and kind of similar mediocre gun depression. And then I'll talk to you about the armor profile and my commander and equipment setup as well before we get stuck into the gameplay. But this is what the vehicle looks like. As you can see, it has 7 degrees of gun depression, so a very well angled turret and well angled upper plate with composite armor hopefully allows you to bounce quite a few rounds, and I'll be showing you how good the armor is in the gameplay with some side skirt armor there, hopefully protecting against HE and ATGMs. And it's a relatively small medium tank. As you can see, it's not one of the longer medium tanks like the Amalad, and hopefully that translates into a slightly less of your tank for your enemies to be able to shoot on the battlefield. In terms of how you pick up this tank, well, it's available today from the 21st of November until the 5th of December in 3 different bundles. You can get both the brand new 2023 Black Edition tank, so that's the World War II 703 version 2, and the Cold War Jaguar Black Edition Eastern Alliance Era 2 medium tank for a great price of 11,600 gold, and that's a fantastic price. Basically the price of one premium tank, and you're getting a World War II and a Cold War premium tank for that price. That's a 50% saving, so very good if you play both modes. Jaguar Black Edition on its own, if you just play Cold War and you want to pick up this vehicle, 40% savings, and it's 7,700 gold, so a pretty decent price there. But I highly recommend the double bundle with the World War II tank if you play both modes, because that's a very, very good price for 2 pretty decent premium tanks. And this is the artwork of both the Black Edition tanks for 2023. So that's the introduction to the Black Edition, the Jaguar Black Edition. And it's, yeah, like I said, essentially a Type 59 base with some added armor to the hull and turret, brought up a little bit towards the 1990s in a prototype version, and we have it inside World of Tanks console. So here's the stats here on the left of the Jaguar Black Edition, and we're going to be comparing first off to the Pharaoh's Fury, the Amalad and the Bandit. These have all been released very recently. Of course, the Bandit was in the Season Pass, the Amalad was a collaboration with the sort of heavy metal bands that we had, and the Pharaoh's Fury in the recent Halloween releases was a tank that you could pick up. The Jaguar Black Edition, 105mm caliber gun, the same as the Pharaoh's Fury. The Amalad has a 120mm and the Bandit 125mm, so we're going to see what the differences are between these tanks. And if you haven't seen my reviews before, green is the best stat, red is the worst, and orange is somewhere in between, and the ones highlighted in yellow are with my commander and equipment setup applied to the base stats, and I'll tell you what I have chosen for my setup in just a little bit. But first, we're going to start off with the Silver XP and Commander XP bonus of the Jaguar Black Edition, and then we'll get stuck into the base stats of these vehicles. So in terms of your silver bonus on the Jaguar Black Edition, 50%, which is the lowest in this comparison. So you're still going to be making some pretty decent silver, especially in Cold War, where the silver multiplier is bigger than in World War II. The best goes to the Ramesses II and the Bandit there at 65%, with the Armour coming in at 5% more at 55%. However, as you're a Black Edition tank, your speciality is an XP bonus, 75%, miles above all the other tanks in this comparison, making you extra XP per battle. And you also have that 10% Commander XP, the same as the Pharaoh's Fury and the Bandit, and only 5% off the Armour. So yeah, earning some nice bonuses there with the Jaguar Black Edition. And now we're going to get stuck into the base stats of all of these vehicles. We start with the hit points and view range, then get on into the mobility, and then the firepower of the Jaguar Black Edition. So hit points wise, 2,600 hit points. It's the same as the Bandit, being the worst in this comparison, 50 less than the Armour, and 200 less than something like the Pharaoh's Fury, Ramesses II. So you've definitely got to try and make your hit points last the battle, but you do have some pretty nice armor and pretty useful armor, and we'll have a look at the armor profile in just a little bit. But yeah, you don't have the highest hit points in Era 2, but you have enough to take between sort of 3 and 5 rounds off of single fire guns, apart from tanks like the Rock Crawler, which will be able to two-shot you, so definitely watch out for that. In terms of your view range, you have the best view range, 505 meters, which allows you to spot pretty well for yourself. You're not going to be spotting tanks that are sneaky like the Rock Crawler or a lot of the light tanks in Era 2. However, with your commander and equipment setup, if you chose to try and invest in view range a bit more, you will outspot some of the other larger, medium and sort of heavy tank, main battle tank that are in Era 2. In terms of your mobility then, you have a 750 horsepower engine with a 20.91 power to weight ratio, a top forward speed of 60.6 kilometers an hour, a reverse speed of 22.7 kilometers an hour. Your hull traverse is 44 degrees a second, and your turret traverse is 34 degrees a second. So if we're looking at the colors, first off, you can see that it has a lot of worst in class statistics in this particular comparison, with the power to weight and the hull traverse being somewhere in the middle. It's not quite as bad in the gameplay as it looks on paper. However, the other tanks in this comparison do feel a lot quicker and a lot easier to maneuver around the battlefield. So the Bandit is way out in front in terms of every stat apart from your reverse speed. The Armour has the best engine power and the best reverse speed, and the Jaguar Black Edition is very similar to the Pharaoh's Fury in a very similar power to weight, slightly smaller engine power, smaller top speed and reverse speed, same hull traverse and the same turret traverse as well. So you want to try and improve these statistics as much as possible, as you do have pretty mediocre mobility for an Era 2 medium tank. The power to weight ratio isn't too bad at all. It's not as bad as the Armour, which is down at 18.65. So I would highly recommend, if you wanted to take a piece of mobility equipment, the traction system, which is the one that I have chosen. However, if you really hate the mobility of this vehicle and you have picked it up and you want to improve it, use the advanced powertrain as well. But there are definitely other stats that you want to invest your setup in, including the DPM and the sort of gun handling of this vehicle. So a pretty disappointing top forward and reverse speed. You can improve that with the traction system. Your hull traverse isn't too bad at all, but you can improve that with things like clutch braking on your commander, and your turret traverse will improve with gun handling skills to a reasonable level of around 40.36 degrees a second if you choose to run the same setup as me. So you have a pretty decent power to weight, so you get up to your top forward and reverse speeds pretty quickly indeed, almost as quickly as something like the Bandit. However, you won't be able to go faster than that top forward or reverse speed unless you use the traction system, and of course you are going down a massive slope or something like that. So definitely improve your top forward or reverse if you can, and don't worry about the turret traverse, that will improve the gun handling skills. Next, we're going to have a look at the firepower of all of these tanks, and like I have mentioned before, the Jaguar Black Edition has a 105mm caliber gun, and that shares the same caliber as the Pharaoh's Fury. The Armour 120mm and the Bandit, it has a 125mm caliber gun. Usually it goes in order, so the higher caliber, the higher alpha. Doesn't always work that way. We'll have to see what it's like in this particular review. So on the Jaguar Black Edition, with its 105mm caliber gun, you have 3 different types of ammunition: standard APF SDS, premium heat, and you have HESH rounds, which are very, very nice indeed. High penetration HE, good for shooting against those lightly armoured targets, especially light tanks. It's not designated as HESH in the garage, it's HE, but it technically is HESH with some fantastic penetration, 230 on those rounds. So in terms of your alpha damage on your standard and premium, 460, and with the HE rounds, if you penetrate using that 230 pen, 570 alpha damage. This is the same alpha damages that are on the Pharaoh's Fury. You can see here that the Armour is a step up from that at 530 and 680 with the HESH rounds, and the Bandit out there at top with the higher caliber gun, 550 with your standard and premium, and 690 if you penetrate using the Bandit's HE rounds. In terms of your speed for your rounds, 1455 meters a second on your standard APF SDS, which is the same as the Pharaoh's Fury. Not as good as the other 2 tanks, however it's still pretty decent for sniping at mid to long ranges. You might have to adjust it slightly at long ranges, and bear in mind you will lose penetration over distance with APF SDS, and if you choose to use your heat rounds, it's 1173 meters a second, so not as good as something like the APF SDS rounds on the Pharaoh's Fury or the Armour, but it is quicker than the heat rounds on the Bandit, and you won't lose any penetration over distance. The only problem with heat is, especially in Cold Wars era 2 and 3, all of the composite and explosive reactive armour that protects against heat, ATGM, will most likely absorb your shells, so you have to aim at parts that haven't got the composite armour, like sort of cupolas, like weak spots, and places that aren't protected by that spaced armour. So definitely I wouldn't recommend taking too many heat rounds. I'd invest in standard and your high penetration HE or your HESH rounds, because they are very tasty indeed. And if you choose to use those HE rounds, 850 meters a second, which is the fastest in this comparison on any HE round or HESH round out of all of these tanks. In terms of the penetration, you have the best standard penetration out of all of these tanks at 432, much better than the Bandit, and also better than the Armour and the Pharaoh's Fury, which is great for players that don't want to fire a lot of premium, and it means that you don't have to fire too much heat, and that penetration is good enough to go through everything you will come across frontally, as long as you know where to shoot. So FE4 to 11, you shoot that sort of bit underneath the gun on the hull, go for the cupola you can go through, as well as the driver and the side of that tank, which is great news. 450mm of heat pen, which isn't as bad as the heat on the Bandit, which is 420, but it's not quite as good as the APF SDS on the Pharaoh's Fury and the Armour, and of course you do have that lower shell velocity, so give a lot more lead with your premium rounds if you do use these heat rounds. And lastly, with your HE rounds, high penetration HE, 230mm, not as good as the 250 on the Pharaoh's Fury, and not as good as the Armour's HESH rounds, which have 290, but still very good for firing against light tanks and lightly armoured medium tanks, and that will boost your DPM dramatically, as you do have that extra 110 alpha damage over your standard and your premium rounds. So you do have the worst alpha damage, but we're going to have to see how that translates into what DPM you have and what gun handling, and we will now go on to those stats. So in terms of your aim time, 2 seconds, it's better than the Pharaoh's Fury, much better than the Bandit, not quite as good as the Armour. However, you do have the best in class in terms of your accuracy. It's a base level of 0.28, so you can invest into other commander and equipment setup statistics to try and improve your mobility, your DPM, and things like that, which is great news. You're much more accurate than the Bandit, and you're slightly more accurate than the Pharaoh's Fury and the Armour, but just be warned, in the gameplay you'll see the gun does bloom out quite a lot, especially on the move, so it's not as good as the 0.28 that it suggests here, but it still is the best in this comparison. Next, you have a rate of fire of 7.5 rounds a minute, with a reload of 8 seconds for 1 round, which gives you a DPM of 3,450. You can see here the DPM is not as good as the Armour, which is way out in top with 3,742, but you have a better DPM than the Pharaoh's Fury and the Bandit, and you also have the best in-class gun depression to be able to use this accuracy and this DPM, which is why I have enjoyed playing the Jaguar Black Edition so much today in my play session. In terms of ammo capacity, you have 52 rounds, 2 less than the Armour. You have 7 more than the Pharaoh's Fury, and you have way more than you have on the Bandit, which has 44 rounds. However, that does have higher alpha damage. You definitely could run out, so definitely pick your choice of ammunition to the best of your ability. So I like to run all standard apart from, I think it is 5 high penetration HE rounds for targets that I know that I can pen and pick off with that 230 pen with 570 alpha damage. And lastly, gun elevation 17 degrees. This is better than the Armour and the Bandit, and only 1 degree less than the Pharaoh's Fury at 18. So great news in terms of the gun depression in this comparison. It's not as good as some of the other tanks in Era 2, but it's by no means as hard to play as something like the Pharaoh's Fury, which I found really struggled on ridgelines, and even the Armour and Bandit were quite awkward to play. That extra degree, giving you that 7 degrees, can be more useful on ridgelines, and 17 degrees of gun elevation shouldn't catch you out too much. So when we look at this tank in terms of its overall package, you have a good silver bonus, albeit the worst in this comparison, the best XP bonus, and you have a decent enough commander XP bonus. You have the lowest hit points joint with the Bandit, so definitely watch out to try and protect your hit points. You do have some pretty decent armor, which we're going to have a look at in just a second, and you also have the best view range, allowing you to spot pretty well for yourself. You want to try and improve your mobility as much as possible. If you want to go all out, use both pieces of mobility equipment, but I highly recommend the traction system, as that will help your whole traverse as well. But your power to weight is pretty good, so you still get into position relatively quickly, and it's not as bad as this color coding scheme here looks in the stats review. Whole traverse is pretty good, and turret traverse, although it's not the best, you can get it up with your gun handling skills. You have slightly slower standard rounds, so give slightly more lead than you would on something like the Armour or the Bandit. However, you have the best standard pen, and you can pen everything you come across frontally if you know where to shoot. Decent enough alpha damage. Unfortunately, these heat rounds I find are largely useless in Eras 2 and 3 of Cold War. However, I will try to make the HE rounds work, as you have great shell velocity on these HESH rounds, great penetration, and it jumps your DPM and your alpha damage up dramatically. So that's it for the stats review part. We're now going to have a look at my commander and my equipment setup, how that affects the base stats of the Jaguar Black Edition. Then I'll talk you through the armor profile, and then we're going to get stuck into the gameplay. So in terms of what equipment I have chosen to run on the Jaguar Black Edition, I have chosen to run the advanced loader, improved ventilation, and I've gone for 1 piece of mobility equipment. I've gone for the traction system, and in terms of my commander skills, I'm running 6th Sense and Born Leader, rapid loading, steady aim, rapid aim snapshot, run and gun, clutch braking, and track mechanics. So in terms of my equipment, loader speaks for itself, trying to get that DPM as high as possible. Vents will help crew performance by 5%, so helping DPM, gun handling out, and also the view range. And traction system to help my whole rotation speed and my max speed both by 10%. And if you really hated the mobility of this tank and you felt like it wasn't getting you up to speed with the flow of the battle, I'll just take off the vents and run the advanced powertrain in place of the vents, but you will lose DPM and a little bit of gun handling. And in terms of commander skills, 6th Sense and Born Leader as standard on every single one of my commanders, rapid loading to help the DPM out. And then I have these 4 gun handling skills to make this gun as accurate as possible. Run and gun might be slightly overkill, so you definitely could consider taking the run and gun out and using something like the off-road driving to help out your terrain resistances more and get your mobility up by a little bit. Or you could choose to run something else which might be useful to you, maybe a little bit of concealment, although that's largely useless in Cold War. Or you could run armor angling, because you're a pretty good brawling medium tank, and reduce the amount of damage you're taking. clutch brake that I run to help the whole traverse out, get my armour round facing where I need it to go, and track mechanic because I like brawling in this tank, supporting the heavy tanks, and I don't want to get caught out in the open and flanked because that's when you become pretty weak. So if you run the same setup as me, you'll be looking at a view range of 537 metres, so it hasn't dropped up dramatically, but it still feels pretty nice for spotting for myself, and I'm spotting more than I did in all of the other medium tanks in this comparison. In terms of mobility, the engine power to weight won't have changed as I'm using just the traction system, so my forward speed's gone from 60.6 to 66.6 kilometers an hour. My reverse speed's gone from 22.7 to 24.97 kilometers an hour. My whole traverse has gone from 44 to 52.5 degrees a second. And my turret traverse has jumped up from 34 to 40.36 degrees a second, thanks to those gun handling skills. And in terms of my gun handling, my aim time's dropped from 2 seconds to 1.88 seconds, and my accuracy's gone down from 0.28 to 0.23. My rate of fire's gone from 7.5 to 10.02, which means I now reload, instead of 8 seconds base, 5.99 seconds. And that means my DPM's gone from 3,450 to 4,609. So a big difference there in the DPM, and it definitely helps you to get out of some pretty sticky situations. So that's what I like to run on this vehicle. You can tweak it to your liking, maybe run and gun slightly overkill with the gun handling, but you will see the bloom after firing and the bloom on the move can be a little bit annoying. Your accuracy during movement is 1.92 meters with my setup, and it can catch you out. However, I found this setup to work pretty well for me as a standard go-to. So that's it for the commander and equipment section part of this review. We're now going to head on into the garage. We'll have a look at the armour profile of the Jaguar Black Edition, and then I will get stuck into the first of 4 gameplay. So I'll see you over in the garage in just a second. So we are in the garage having a look at the armour viewer of the Jaguar Black Edition. We're going to go from the thickest down to the thinnest parts of the armour of this medium tank and see how effective the armour profile is of this medium tank. So from my play session earlier today, what I can tell you is that this bounces quite a few rounds and absorbs ATGMs quite nicely off the turret and off the upper hull in particular. The side armor is pretty good for side scraping, and with the 7 degrees of gun depression, if you're on a ridgeline, you can hide your cupolas and it can become quite effective. So the thickest parts of your armor, or the thickest part of your armor, is 250 millimeters, and it is very, very well angled. As you can see, it's behind the gun, but these two sections here to the left and right of the gun underneath are very well sloped back, and they're only 250 millimeters of base thickness. However, due to the angling, they will ricochet rounds very, very easily indeed. Sometimes you'll be unlucky and a shell will ricochet down into your upper hull or turret ring and penetrate, but a lot of times, especially when you're using your 7 degrees of gun depression and you're on a ridge line and angled like this, it will ricochet very nicely indeed. Next, 220 millimeters of armor. This kind of connects both parts of composite armor to the hull. So the turret is one part of composite armor. The hull is comprised of basically 2 sections of composite armor, which protects against heat and ATGMs. This is 220 millimeters, and it just basically joins up the base and the top layer. Your turret ring, 210 millimeters. So from the rear, if you shoot in between the rear of this tank and underneath the turret, you will go through very easily. However, if you have this kind of shot, just go for the rear because there's no armor, and you can even pen HE rounds and autocannon rounds to the rear of this vehicle. 200 millimeters of armor on the sort of front left and the front right sides of this turret. As you can see, it is angled, so when this thing's on a ridgeline using a bit of its gun depression and it's angled like this, if you shoot the sides of the turret, it will be an auto ricochet. So wait for a flat shot like this and you'll be easily able to go through. And as you can see, the rest of the turret is very flat, so from the side, and if it's over angling, you can go through the sides of the turret very, very easily indeed. You have 195 millimeters of armor towards the rear of this turret, and this part cannot be overmatched, so you don't have to worry about that. 185mm of turret ring armour and some behind the mantlet there, but it is well tucked in and you've got to be very unlucky for a shot to ricochet down off the turret into your turret ring. And if you face hug it, you can get a kind of shoot in it, but from my experience, it still seems quite hard to actually get a shot down here because of the angling of the lower part of this turret. The front right and front left of the upper part of the turret, very well angled at 180mm, and when it's using its 7 degrees of gun depression, it actually becomes slightly weaker and slightly flatter. However, if it's looking at you like this, and maybe you're a smaller tank and you shoot at the front of this turret, it can ricochet at some angles. However, you still can go through with some pretty decent penetration. The higher you are, the easier it is to go through, as the flatter this section of armour is. But it is composite armour, and sometimes it will protect against ATGMs, but not as well as the upper hull does from my experience. You have this 170mm band of armour here, which is the mid plate, basically connecting the lower plate and the upper plate, and you can go through this parts of armour with some pretty decent penetration. There is armour behind it, however you kind of catch the centre welding in between the composite armour and you can go through. 160mm of sort of front turret armour here, so that cannot be overmatched either, but the cupola 160mm easily able to be seen when it's looking at you like this. However, when you're using your gun depression, it can hide this quite well on a ridgeline. In terms of the other cupola and the bottom part of the other viewport, 150mm, weak spots, and when you are using your gun depression, although you still can see them, if you're moving on a ridgeline, try and make these as hard to hit and your turret can become quite effective indeed. Then you have this 145mm outer layer of composite armour on the upper hull, well angled, and when it's angled at sort of 40 to 45 degrees like this, you're going to be ricocheting for days and you're going to be protecting yourself against ATGMs and heat rounds very, very nicely off this upper plate. A section here which joins the upper and lower plate and that mid part of 140mm, and then these two outermost sections here at 120mm on the lower plate, but the whole of the lower plate there, or the main part that you're going to see, is 105mm. It is very well angled, so if it's coming around a corner and you shoot it like this, you're going to ricochet off, but for the most part it's a pretty easy penetration, and there is 100mm I believe behind this as well, but good penetration will be able to go through, but it will protect against some ATGMs occasionally. However, high penetration ATGMs usually go through. However, autocannons won't, and that can protect you against getting shredded from things with autocannons from the front. And then you have this base layer here, 100mm, so it's behind the lower plate and behind the upper plate, and this is composite armour as well. Again, very well angled, so upper plate, if you're angling like this protects you very nicely indeed, and it protects very well from ATGM, so don't shoot ATGMs into this section here, or the tracks will get absorbed. Lower plate ATGMs I found can still go through as it's weaker on the top part. However, I highly recommend not shooting ATGMs at the front of this vehicle. Go for the sides, or especially the rear, where it is extremely weak. But as you can see, it's very well angled and it can trick your opponents into shooting it. So angle it 40 to 45 degrees, and when you're on a ridgeline using your 7 degrees of gun depression, this becomes more effective. The actual sides of this vehicle are 80mm, so great for side scraping, and the rear parts of your turret there are 80mm, so side on it's going to be an easy pen. However, if it's kind of on a ridgeline, it's angled slightly, maybe you're a little bit below it, you can shoot the sides of these turrets and you'll ricochet, as it will be an auto ricochet angle. Then you have these sections here at 65mm, which basically make up the sides of the mantlet. 50mm of armour here, which is kind of just below the tip of, or the furthest most part of the turret, which protrudes out. 45mm of armour on the back of the turret and the lower part of the rear of this vehicle, which you can penetrate with HE, autocannons and ATGMs. 40mm is the gun and the lowest part there, very small strip of the lower plate. And now we come to one of the biggest downsides of this vehicle, and it's this section here on top of the turret, which is 30mm. So this kind of circular part on the turret you can overmatch with 91mm caliber guns or higher. So when you're on a ridgeline and you're using your 7 degrees of gun depression, it's a very hard sort of shot for you to hit. But if you're slightly above this vehicle, and if you shoot this purple section here, not the front or the rear, but this middle bit of the turret, and you've got a 91mm caliber gun or higher, you can overmatch, and it can become quite annoying, and you can land ATGMs on top of this roof of the turret and go through. So definitely watch out for that if you're playing this vehicle. Then you've got 25mm of sort of side skirt armour over the tracks. The tracks themselves and the top parts here, 20mm of extra spaced armour. And then the actual rear of this vehicle is 15mm. So again, HE autocannons, ATGMs right through this, and yeah, going to be damaging internal modules, especially your engine. The rest is a little bit of spaced armour in front there of the viewports to the right and the left. So all in all, it's a pretty decent medium tank brawler, and thankfully it makes up for the slightly lower hit points that you have at 2600. So you have very well angled composite armour on the turret. You have a very well angled upper and lower plate. Upper plate extremely strong with 2 sections of composite armour. Lower plate slightly easier to penetrate, but the sort of whole of this hull can absorb ATGMs quite nicely, as can the turret, and bounce some shells. The mid part can be a little bit annoying and penetrated by good penetration. Overmatch that little purple section on the roof with 91mm caliber guns or higher. If you're playing this tank, try and side scrape, bait people into shooting your upper hull or your sides, and don't give flat shots to your turret if you can help it. And if you're face hugging it, try and shoot down onto the upper plate, and you should be able to go through. The higher you are, it negates that angling of this vehicle, but it's actually pretty good as long as people don't get your sides, and especially your very, very weak butt. You can be golden in this vehicle, and it feels like it bounces quite a few rounds. So that's it for the armor part of this review. We're now going to head on into the first of 4 gameplays, so I'll see you over in the first gameplay in just a second. So here we are in the first gameplay of today's video, and we are here on Kaunas in the Jaguar Black Edition. This is a standard battle, and we have spawned in the southeastern corner of the map, and I'm going to make my way to the centre and try and shoot at tanks that are going from the north down towards the eastern side of this map, and then I also get to turn around and protect our base as well. So you can now get a good indication of the mobility of this vehicle. It gets into position pretty nicely. Of course, it will be slightly slower and slightly worse at turning if you didn't use the traction system like I have in these gameplays, and we get our first shell off there for 482 damage, so rolling slightly high, getting a little bit of assistance, so that higher view range this medium tank has over the tanks we compared it to in today's review, doing us justice there. And I hope you notice that sort of when we're moving and we're stopping to aim, the bloom just feels longer than the aim time says it does in the garage. So with my setup, the aim time is now down to 1.88 seconds. Because the accuracy during movement is 1.92 meters, it just feels like it takes a while to settle down, and it's not the best at shooting on the move, even with the run and gun, which is why I ran all of the gun handling skills to get the most out of this gun, because you have a pretty nice DPM. We've increased it as much as I felt like we can. And yeah, this is your main attribute of this tank. And when you combine that with some pretty nice armor that protects against ATGMs and does bounce against sort of equal tier medium or equal level medium tank in terms of the sort of status of medium tanks in Cold War era too, it does very nicely at brawling in that regard. So our reload is now down to 5.99 seconds with our DPM of 4,609, and you definitely can get the damage out quite quickly in this vehicle. You just got to be able to find the positions to be able to do so. So you don't have the gun depression like you would in other medium tanks that maybe have 10 degrees or 9-10 degrees to be able to use a lot of the ridgelines. So you've got to think a little bit more about your positioning, but it feels a lot easier to play than something like the Bandit, which really struggles with that. I think it is 5 degrees of gun depression, and it feels just a lot easier to play. So we've noticed our base is now under threat. We're down by 1 tank. We've only picked up 1,800 damage with that shot there on the rock crawler. However, we're going to have to try and see if we can defend the base by creating a little bit of a crossfire here. And as you can see there, I carry large med, large repair kit, and also an enhanced smoke screen. I could run the combat rations to further improve the gun handling and, more importantly, the DPM and the view range. However, the smokescreen does get you out of a jam, and when people get behind you, if they've got HE or an autocannon or an ATGM, they are going to do nasty damage very quickly to the rear of this vehicle, so it can help you in that regard. So now we've set up here on this kind of ridgeline where we're able to rock backwards and forwards, side to side, use the 7 degrees of gun depression that this vehicle has, and it feels quite nice. You can struggle on some ridgelines on maps like Kaunas where there are large hills. However, for the most part, I feel pretty comfortable playing this vehicle. And now we're just trying to put our DPM to work. The gun handling that we have improved, and the DPM is doing us well here. Haven't got quite enough gun depression here to go over, but we're able to go through the drive wheel there of the FV4-211, showing you frontally you can penetrate even some of the strongest tanks or heavy tanks in Era 2, thanks to that good standard penetration of 432mm. I don't carry any heat rounds, I just carry those 5 HE rounds or HESH rounds with that 230mm of penetration for that 570 alpha damage for those lightly armoured tanks. So we are getting flanked by this 30B2 coming over here to help this Object 120. A little bit late popping my smokescreen trying to help him out, so I'm going to join up with the rest of my team. We have a full health FV4-211. We've picked up 4.1k damage and 518. We're going to see if we can take this one down, but I'm trying to get as much distance between me and that 30B2, because any tanks that have autocannons, things like that, multiple weapon system, ATGMs, yeah, you're not going to last too long if they sort of get the sides and rear of your vehicle. Struggling there to penetrate this FV4-211, went for an HE round just to see if we could splash him. Unfortunately, we didn't do any damage because of all the composite armour on that vehicle. However, it allows us to track him, flank that FV4-211, get his side, penetrate him, and now we can come round and see if we can help put some shots into this Centurion 9 and this AMX 30B2. This ridgeline there is good enough for 7 degrees, however I lazily auto lock when I should just aim my shots. We would have been able to take one more damaging round off that AMX 30B2. Trying to get a shot there into the sort of front of the turret of the 30B. Unfortunately, it ricochets off the outer edge, but we're just going to be able to take the shot. We're full health now and aim it right into the side drive wheel of that 30B, taking him out. And now, as we have plenty of hit points left, we should be able to brawl with this Centurion 9. We angle up there, shot gets absorbed by the spaced armour on our tracks, put another one into the Centurion 9, and we have the better DPM and the miles better hull armour, so we can just go in and we're able to put 3 rounds before he can even shoot us more than the once. And now it's a 3 versus 1. The last remaining tank is an AMX 30B2, and it looks like a pretty decent first game here in the Jaguar Black Edition. And this was probably my second game, I think, in this vehicle. And a lot of the games were like this, around the 4,000 to 6,000 damage mark, where kind of mediocre for Era 2 medium, but still did the job good enough as a support medium tank, and a nice silver profit there thanks to an op that's going on with the Thanksgiving Black Friday stuff in World of Tanks Con. So we finished second there on our team, 3 kills, 5.7k direct damage, 518 assistance, and those beautiful profits with that nice XP bonus there, thanks to the massive XP bonus that this vehicle gets of 75%. So that's it for the first gameplay, 5 minutes and 54 seconds. We're now going to head on into the second gameplay. So now we are on Karelia in the Jaguar Black Edition. This is a standard battle and we have spawned in the southwest of this map, and I'm going to make my way to the hill situated in G7, G8 and try and get that as quick as possible. And this is the reason why I increased the mobility of this tank, so we're able to get there as quick as possible, take important locations, and hopefully when we're there we're able to dominate the hill. That allows us to get shots into the centre of the map and also down onto tanks that will be in the sort of south eastern corner of the map. So unfortunately we take a shot there and the heavy tank just sits in front of everyone there, which is not a great idea, a little bit frustrating there. So I pop the smoke, protect me and him, and then we can come up on this hill, contest it and hopefully win it. So T-72M1 there, we get a snapshot into him and it looks like he misses us. And I'm just hoping that this heavy tank next to me will be able to push the tempo, because if we allow too many of them to climb up here, it can be costly for our team if we lose this position, and yeah, we'll be sent back to the garage pretty quickly. In this position, got to be a little bit careful about getting shot from the centre and the sort of north of the map towards the enemy's base. However, this enemy T-72M1 is turning around to deal with our T-55 Enigma, so we're going to come round, see if we can help him out. Unfortunately for us, I aim like a complete donkey there and miss my shell. We got a light tank to the left of me that has come up. We take another shell from the centre of the map, and what I'm going to do is, now we have 3 tanks on the high ground, I'm going to join these tanks on the low ground, try and create a crossfire, see if we can get this bandit out of play, and then once we've won the hill, hopefully that means that we have the most important part of this map sort of taken. We can also protect our base from this position. And yeah, this is a pretty decent support tank and what you want to be doing in the Jaguar Black Edition. You have enough armour and DPM to be able to brawl pretty well with a lot of other medium tanks, especially tanks like the Bandit and things like that we've compared this tank to in the stats part of today's review. You are going to struggle against tanks that have exceptional penetration, or tanks that have multiple weapon system and autocannons, things like that have better DPM or combined DPM that can absolutely shred you. However, for the most part, it brawls pretty nicely and it feels so much easier to play than the Bandit and the Ammo Lad and the Pharaoh's Fury, just from my personal experience. A lot of it down to that sort of extra 2 or 1 degrees of gun depression, depending on what you're comparing this tank to. It allows you to use more ridgelines. The armour feels much better, especially the upper hull and turret armour, and it also protects against ATGMs, which is nice, and it can keep you in the game. And of course, with the Black Edition being extra XP bonus with the silver bonus, I think this is a pretty decent tank for a pretty damn good price, especially if you like the World War II tank as well and you want to go for that combined bundle. So here we are on 4.8k direct damage. We have blocked 550 and we got 137 assistance. We're up by 2 kills and we've got a whole host of enemies towards the sort of centre and the north there to shoot at, and we're just trying to protect our base. We have a light tank and a medium tank towards their base, and we also have 2 medium tanks towards the north that are going to be doing some spotting for us, and we might as well just sit back and put our gun to work. And the further kind of back you are from your enemy, the armour will become more effective, of course. However, you'll be doing this tank a disservice if you just sat back and sniped. It's definitely a good support vehicle, especially if you're supporting like a heavy push or a lemming train, which usually happens, of course, especially from my experience in the Cold War game mode. However, sometimes when you're the first one into a position, if you haven't got any support, you do have to be a bit careful, because as soon as people shoot at you from multiple angles, they can get your side, the flat parts of your turret, or get the rear of your vehicle. And with only 2,600 hit points, yeah, you have to be a little bit careful. But don't be scared when you have the hit points towards the mid to late stages, like we have here, to go forward, use them and brawl with other tanks. And lightly armoured tanks like the Leopard 1A1 or light tanks, you can ram very nicely indeed for some extra damage. So I popped the smoke screen there because there's an RDF LT that was on the hill. He's fighting a medium tank, so we can come up here. I don't mind taking a couple shots so we can take these tanks out of the game. And you saw that we relocated pretty nicely, and now we're going to be going toe to toe with this T-72A. Put one into him, into sniper mode through the smoke. Going to go for a quick nudge on him. Fortunately, we track him in place, which means we get the kill and also some extra tracking. And yeah, we improved our result there in the last couple minutes by being aggressive, finishing with a good profit with or without a premium account. That's only a second class. 1,376 base XP, 2 kills, 7k direct damage, 671 assistance, blocking 550 in only 4 minutes and 44 seconds. So a pretty decent result there, and we helped our team win that important location at the start of the game. So that's it for the second gameplay. We're now going to head on into the third one. So here we are on Heilbronn in the Jaguar Black Edition. We've spawned in the southwest of this map in a standard battle, and we're going to make our way towards the centre ridge, try and get some shots out towards the north and use our light tank's vision at the start of this battle. And I usually play the Jaguar Black Edition in the same way, so for the first third of the battle I'll try and play that support style gameplay to either the light tank's vision or maybe a heavy tank push. Then later on in the battle I'll go in, use the DPM, but more importantly the brawling capacity of this vehicle with some of the hit points that I've hopefully saved up, and yet help turn the tide towards the sort of last 2/3 of the battle. So our light tank has gone in there against their enemy light tank. We're trying to see if we can get any shots here. We've come further left on this ridgeline because we know we can use 7 degrees of gun depression here. If I went further to the right, I wouldn't have been able to get any shots, but I'm going to come over now and help our light tank out. He's trying to take out this enemy BMP2, and I've been in that situation that our friendly light tank has been in many times, where I've gone forward trying to get some vision and I've been YOLO'd by a platoon or an enemy light tank, and I've had no support and I've been taken out of the battle. So I'm going to come down here, use the DPM and brawling capacity of this vehicle, take out the enemy light tank, and now we can try and put some shots out towards these two mediums and this light tank in the centre of the map. We have some hard cover here in the form of the destructed train track to our left, so hopefully that will protect us from getting shot towards the north. We're quite vulnerable here, but I'm just going to try and sit here and put as much damage out before I feel like I need to retreat. So we get a shot there into the Scorpion 90. M60A1 is looking at us, so we're going to side scrape off of this destructible train track, or destructed train track I should say, and then hopefully get some nice shells at these light tanks, hopefully whittling them down to a one shot, and hopefully our teammates can deal with them. And then we are taking some shots, so we're now going to go further towards the north, try and get a little bit higher, and then hopefully we should be able to get some more damage out towards the centre of the map. But we're losing tanks left, right and centre. We're already down by 5 tanks, so it's not looking too great for me at the moment, but I want to get farther enough away that I can put my DPM to work. This AMX-30B2 for Rad is on enough hit points to probably come in with his autocannon and completely shred me, but we're keeping our armour, or our thickest parts of our armour, our hull, towards him. His autocannon's not going through our upper plate thanks to that composite armour, those two sections on the upper plate and that angled composite armour on the turret, and we have absolutely wrecked this very good premium tank in a short space of time because we didn't let him have our side. We improved our traverse speed with the traction system and also clutch braking with our commander, which allowed us to use the thickest parts of our armour, get it around to our opponent, and that allowed us to get out of that sticky situation. Unfortunately, in the time it took for us to take out that AMX-30B2 Ferrari, we lost a lot more tanks. This is almost always going to be a defeat in this kind of situation, but I'm still going to try and get as many shots out as possible. Try and get a shot there on the bandit, a little bit derpy because of that accuracy during movement. You saw me earlier miss a shot on the move as well. Pop our smoke screen, and now we're going to try and find a ridgeline to make our last stand. And just as I was talking about the poor on the move accuracy, we managed to hit a really long shot there on the I think it was an M60A1, and now we're just going to come underneath this hard cover and probably only get one more shot in this battle, maybe 2 if the enemy were to bounce off us. So we get a quick snapshot there into the bandit, and then hopefully, I was hoping to beat his reload, he goes around the corner, and then an enemy Jaguar Black comes around on nearly full health, and yeah, we get sandwiched between a Jaguar Black and another tank. But still a pretty nice game there for the Jaguar Black Edition, showing you what it's capable of even in a defeat. We picked up a 3rd class mastery there, 587 basic speed. We finished top of our team with 2 kills, 7.5k direct damage, 202 assistance, and more importantly 1200 blocks, showing you that it brawls quite nicely as well. And in 3 minutes 52 seconds, a 7.5k direct damage with 202 assistance isn't too bad. So that's it for the 3rd gameplay there. We're now going to head on into the 4th and final gameplay of today's video. So now we are on Severogorsk in the Jaguar Black Edition, and this is the 4th and final gameplay of today's video. We have spawned in the northeast of this map in a standard battle, and I'm going to make my way to where I've just pinged towards C3 and contest that hill. Unfortunately, a lot of our teammates are going to be going down the 0 line towards the south of the map, but if needs be, we can choose to relocate, hopefully through the centre of the map, and get out of harm's way. But we do have 2 medium tanks and what looks like 2 heavy tanks following us into position, so hopefully we can do some good work. And it might be a little bit of a struggle to use 7 degrees of gun depression here, however hopefully we can try and make it work. So in my play session today in the Jaguar Black Edition, it's much more comfortable to use than the Bandit, Pharaoh's Fury, Ammo Lad, tanks that don't have good gun depression, thanks to that 7 degrees of gun depression this vehicle has. However, it's still not as comfortable as something like the M60A1 Rise, which is one of my favourite premium tanks in Era 2, and it does have kind of comparable armour to that vehicle, if not slightly better. However, the DPM and the good standard penetration combined with the armour that this vehicle has and that 7 degrees of gun depression makes it pretty nice to play, and for the price of this vehicle I think it's a pretty good pickup if you're looking for an Era 2 medium tank. Maybe you've missed out on some of the recent releases. It's definitely not as competitive and as comfortable as things like the M60A1 Rise or tanks that have, you know, better gun depression. However, it's still very, very nice indeed. And for players that don't like playing glass cannon tanks, this can brawl very, very nicely indeed. So, unfortunately, in that position we were just in, we did have to leave our last teammate there to get surrounded and taken out. And we've used our mobility to quickly come and join our teammates here towards the south. We're only down by 1 tank, so I did not want to get taken out there because we still have all of our hit points, and I feel like I can give more to this game by joining up with our team, clearing out this south towards the enemy's base, and then if needs be we can always turn around and defend our base. So we're going to come in now, we're full health, and this is the part of the game, the last kind of 2/3 to 1/3 of the game, where we can use our armour and our DPM to come in and brawl, and hopefully this can turn the tide of this battle. There's an enemy FE4-11 camping right on the hills, because why would you not? And now we're just going to rush forward with this massive lemming train, try and get as much damage as possible, and yet put the DPM of this good gun to work. We've only picked up 2.5k damage so far and 720 assistance, but that is soon going to change. We are capturing their base, which is bringing all of the enemy tanks towards us. I didn't want to sit there because that Leopard 2AV had shots into our side, so we're just going to come in on this enemy Jaguar Black Edition, and as you can see, he's kind of bouncing and doing alright frontally, but as soon as we get the rear of that tank, we set him on fire as well, and that's where the engine is, right in the rear there, I believe, and yeah, we're able to completely take him out of the game very quickly with the help of our teammates. So now we are up by 2 tanks and it's looking much better. Our base is under threat, which is why I'm making my way there. I'm auto-locking and shooting at this Leopard to kind of multitask as we're making our way into position. And hopefully we're going to be able to hit some shots on the move. So the engine is in the rear of this vehicle, very, very close to the outermost edges of the armour. So yeah, you will definitely damage engine set fires very nicely, especially if you have HE or HESH and you're penetrating through the rear of this vehicle. Now we're going to come up to this Leopard 2AV, quite hard to penetrate from the front, didn't want to get around by him because we'd take a lot of damage, and now we can just put our DPM to work using distraction of our teammates, and we still haven't taken any damage, even though we've kind of been racing around and people have had shots at us. We're doing some pretty good work. We're now going to head towards the 2 tanks that are heading down the 0 line, this M60A1 and also the heavy tank, as they look like they have the most hit points, so we can come and help our tank destroyer out. Free aim a shot there on the move on that M60A1, which we hit, taking our damage total to 6.3k, and from what looked like a very perilous position, with us completely losing my original position, we relocated and we have turned this battle into what looks like almost a guaranteed win. My intention here was to auto-lock, kill the MOBAT, and then ram this M60A1. We rammed the M60A1 anyway. Not the best at ramming, but you know, we had enough hit points here and we're just trying to take as many hit points off this tank as possible. And he gets subsequently taken out there by our friendly bandit. Just one last heavy tank remaining in this game, and then that will be a wrap for this gameplay and also a wrap for this video. So I hope that I've demonstrated to you what this tank is capable of, and that is much more comfortable to play than a lot of the recent premium tanks that have been released in the Era 2, the medium tanks, and that it's actually a pretty decent tank for the price. I very much enjoyed playing it, and it's probably one that I will take out as opposed to something like the Bandit, which I've de-equipped and I probably won't ever take out again because it just does not feel comfortable to play with that 5 degrees of gun depression. Trying to find this last remaining, I think it's the FV4211 that was probably camping towards the hill. He's not there, but he will soon get spotted right behind us, sort of more towards the centre of the map. And we're going to have to turn around and see if we can get 1 or 2 more shells into this last remaining heavy tank. We've got plenty of time left, so no need to worry about capturing their base just yet. And it's nice to have a game where we didn't have to get capped out or cap them. We're able to actually put this gun to work and do what is intended of tanks in this game and not just sit in the circles unless absolutely necessary. So the FV4211 spotted on full health gets set on fire. It looks like he put the fire out, but then we damaged an engine again, tracked him there in place, put another one into him, and I was going to go for an epic ram kill there. Yeah, we're not quite heavy enough or going fast enough there to kill the FV4211, but we do get a little bit of tracking there on that FV4211, I believe, finishing that game with 1 kill, 8.5k direct damage, 1.1k assistance, high caliber, only a first class, 1564 base XP, and a very, very nice game there with a nice profit without a premium account, showing you all that's good about this tank. You've seen that you can struggle if people get your side, and the 7 degrees can be a little bit annoying, but for the most part, pretty solid, pretty enjoyable, and a pretty good price if you're looking for an Era 2 premium tank. And the Black Edition tanks also look pretty snazzy as well. So I hope you've enjoyed today's review of the Jaguar Black Edition. I'll be putting one out of the World War II double-barreled Object 7032 very, very soon. And until next time, thank you for watching. I'll see you on the battlefield, and bye for now.